A silence enters before the words, as if to remind you that all speech is only the aftermath of longing. The room grows heavier, the pulse slows in the hush, and you feel, not for the first time, the dull ache beneath the surface, an exhaustion that clings to your bones, not born of labor or sleeplessness, but of something older and more insidious, the burden of being. You reach for a cause, a reason, but find only a shadow, shapeless, patient, waiting for you to notice it at last. Existence itself is a weight. Each day begins with the weary resurrection of the self, not a triumph, but a reanimation. The will stirs, and with it the machinery of need, hunger, desire. The eyes open, and the world returns, demands, obligations, unresolved hungers parading in the mind. This is not a drama of heroes, but a procession of longing without rest. What the world calls life is nothing more than the endless multiplication of wants and the inexorable erosion of satisfaction. One is always being pulled from the shore of contentment back into the sea of striving. There is no island of arrival, only the endless heaving of the water. You have been told again and again that happiness is the aim, that fulfillment waits just beyond the next horizon, in achievement, in romance, in the act of self-construction. Modernity sells this mirage with fanatical zeal, its banners streaming above the marketplace of the soul. You can become anything, but the promise is a lie. For every self that is made, another is broken. For every fantasy attained, a deeper hunger is revealed. You chase what flees from you, and in the chase, the body grows faint, the mind grows dim. You are tired, not because you do too much, but because you are asked, each day, to want too much. To be alive is to hunger, and to hunger is to suffer. Even the smallest child knows this, a knowledge etched into the trembling lip, the anxious grasp, the midnight cry. Suffering is not an accident, it is the core of being. The world is not shaped to your measure. It resists, frustrates, thwarts. The will strains against what is, and the world does not yield. Life becomes a series of negotiations with disappointment, a slow adaptation to the implacability of fate. Hope rises and is leveled by circumstance. Love blooms and withers in the sun of indifference or betrayal. Health thrives and is devoured by time. The energy required to maintain even the illusion of contentment is enormous, unending. You do not rest because you are never allowed to be at peace with what is. The ache of incompletion gnaws even in your quietest moments. How strange it is that the very faculties which promise escape the intellect, imagination, memory, become engines of exhaustion. The mind remembers not only what is, but what was and what could be, layering regret and anticipation atop the simple presence of now. You replay wounds as if the past could be changed by mere recollection. You forecast disasters as if anxiety could shield you from their coming. You invent alternate lives, parallel worlds where the wound never opened, where the heart was not broken, where every if only was realized. But the mind cannot will itself into those illusions for long. It always returns, battered and depleted, to the present, to the relentless truth of what is. And so even thought, which might have been a refuge, becomes a kind of cage. The more you think, the more you tire. The more you seek, the less you find. You were not made for constant striving. The body, like the mind, seeks its rhythm, its hush. But society mocks stillness, as laziness urges you to produce, to improve, to perform. The marketplace of attention is insatiable. It consumes not only your energy, but your sense of self. The digital glow never dims. The notifications never cease. The tide of images, words, and demands never recedes. Each alert is a summons to re-enter the game of comparison, the endless stacking of lives against each other, the gnawing suspicion that somewhere else, someone else is living better, fuller, brighter. The fatigue that weighs on your chest is not just physical, but existential. The exhaustion of being asked, day after day, to be more than you are. There are moments, rare and fleeting, when the veil thins and you see the truth laid bare. All of it, the striving, the desire, the disappointment, is a cycle with no end. a wheel whose axis is suffering. The ancients called this Samsara, the wheel of becoming, and saw in its endless turning the futility of worldly hope. You call it burnout, ennui, depression, but these are only new names for an ancient malaise. The soul tires because it cannot escape itself. The self tires because it cannot escape the world. The energy you spend maintaining the fiction of purpose is itself the source of your exhaustion. You are told that meaning can be found in connection, in love, in contribution, that to give yourself to another is to be renewed. Yet even love is no escape. To love is to expose oneself to loss, to feel the vulnerability of one's own impermanence in the fragility of another. Every embrace carries the seed of parting. Every act of care is a wager against the void. The lover is not a remedy, but a mirror, reflecting back the finitude and insufficiency of all things. In seeking relief from your own isolation, you encounter the isolation of the other, and the two solitudes remain side by side, never truly dissolving into unity. You are left more aware of your separation, more attuned to the underlying loneliness that shapes all things. Work, too, is offered as salvation. To labor is to lose oneself, to become a tool for a purpose larger than the self. But work is never finished. It devours the hours, flattens the soul, and when the task is done, emptiness returns, sharper than before. You build, you accumulate, you rise, and yet the hunger persists, more demanding for having been briefly sated. You are tired, not only by the demands of the world, but by the futility of meeting them. Each victory is provisional. Each achievement is devoured by the next desire. The noise of modern life is the hum of insatiable want. Consumption, spectacle, entertainment, these are not sources of joy, but sedatives for the aching will. The screens flicker, the feeds refresh, but nothing truly satisfies. The soul, numb with distraction, forgets what it is to be present, to endure the ordinary pain of being. When the stimuli fade, when the silence returns, what remains is the raw, unvarnished longing at the core of the self, a longing without object, a thirst that cannot be named. You ask yourself, quietly, if others feel the same. You watch them move through the world, smiling, achieving, gathering their small triumphs, and you wonder if they are as tired as you, if they carry the same unspoken dread. The answer lies in the eyes, in the tremor beneath the laughter, in the silences that linger after the crowd disperses. Everyone carries it, this exhaustion of spirit. Everyone labors beneath the same sentence. To be alive is to want what cannot be possessed, to strive for what recedes, to suffer for what must be surrendered. And what, then, of hope? What of the promise that things will improve, that the tide of suffering will one day ebb? This, too, is an illusion, a necessary narcotic administered by the will to itself. The future is a fiction spun to anesthetize the present, a mirage that withers on approach. There is only the revolving wheel, the repetition of need, the recurring ache of incompletion. The fatigue that defines you is not a flaw to be corrected, but a symptom of the human condition. To tire is not to fail, but to exist. There is a relief, strange and subtle, in admitting this. The frantic search for causes and cures grows quiet. The weight of self-blame lifts, replaced by a melancholy acceptance. You are not at war with yourself. You are a witness to the endless play of hunger and disappointment. The world is not yours to conquer, nor are you required to find happiness in its shadows. The permission to despair is, in its way, a kind of peace. You see, the tiredness that haunts you is the echo of a cosmic weariness, the afterimage of a universe grinding ceaselessly toward entropy. The stars themselves burn out, the galaxies drift apart, the atoms decay. Life, brief and trembling, is only a flicker in the night. Against this backdrop, what is your fatigue but the most natural response? To demand otherwise is to deny the nature of all things. Society recoils from this truth, builds towers of distraction and consolation to shield itself from the abyss. Festivals, entertainments, the relentless chase after novelty, all designed to make the emptiness bearable. But beneath the noise, the same hush persists, the same undertow of sorrow. The will can be diverted, never extinguished. The ache can be masked, never cured. There are those who preach transcendence, who promise liberation from suffering through enlightenment, renunciation, or surrender. But even the saints and sages, in their moments of honesty, confess to the persistence of longing, the unyielding gravity of pain. Nirvana, moksha, the kingdom of heaven, these are metaphors, not destinations. They gesture toward the possibility of acceptance, not the abolition of suffering. The tiredness that colors your days is not a barrier to wisdom, but its invitation. You watch the seasons pass, feel the repetition of time in the slow decay of the body, the withering of ambitions, the dimming of passions. Each year, the distance between desire and fulfillment grows more apparent. The face in the mirror becomes a stranger. The future contracts into a series of minor adjustments, not grand transformations. You grieve, not for what has been lost, but for the promise that loss could be avoided. In this grief, you find an unexpected companion, stillness. The world will not yield to your will. The self will not satisfy its own hunger. What remains is the awareness itself, unadorned, lucid, resigned. You are not what you desire, nor are you what you fear. You are the silent witness, the one who endures. Perhaps there is a beauty in this, not the beauty of victory, but the fragile beauty of surrender. The candle burns lower, illuminating less and less, until only the outline of your own hand remains. The noise recedes, the body grows heavy, the mind silent. You breathe, and in that breath is no promise, no demand, no illusion of completion, only the gentle acquiescence to what is. This is why you are always tired, even when nothing's wrong. The soul, weary of its own dreams, returns at last to itself. In the deep hours of the night, when the world is quiet and the masks are set aside, you encounter your own absence. The I that has struggled and striven, that has loved and lost, is no longer required to perform. There is a release, cold and clear, the knowledge that nothing is owed, that nothing will satisfy, that even sorrow is only a passing weather in the endless sky of being. You have reached the edge of wanting, the borderland where hope and despair dissolve into one another. The self, so tenacious in its grasping, grows faint, transparent. You do not vanish, you do not triumph, you simply remain, like the last note of a song fading into silence. The tiredness persists, but it is no longer your enemy. It is a companion, a reminder of the quiet truth. To be is to suffer is to know is to let go. There is no further to go, no lesson to be learned. The candle has burned down to its end. The light flickers, then dies. And in the darkness, you are not alone. You are what remains when all else is surrendered. The rest is silence. The ache in the chest is not merely physical, nor is it the product of circumstance. It is the soft persistence of existence itself, the quiet gravity of being drawn downward, always downward, into a world that answers longing with silence. The day begins, and already the spirit flinches from the oncoming tide of desire, not because desire promises joy, but because it promises only repetition, another turn in the labyrinth, where every exit leads back to the same corridor of need. There is no escape, only the gradual realization that escape was never the point. The effort to be satisfied is itself the source of unrest. Even pleasure, which arrives garlanded with the promise of relief, contains the seeds of future pain. Anticipation sharpens the edges of experience, and fulfillment arrives diluted, already retreating from the grasp. Joy is brittle, always on the verge of cracking beneath the weight of time, always shadowed by the certainty of its own passing. The more urgently one seizes it, the more swiftly it slips away, leaving only the residue of longing in its place. It is not pleasure that exhausts, but the restless expectation, the endless return to the empty bowl, hoping for sustenance where there is only echo. In the theater of the world, every mask is a confession. The roles you play, worker, lover, child, friend, are but costumes donned to placate the hunger of the will, to postpone the encounter with your own emptiness. Each performance is convincing for a time, but the applause is hollow, the audience invisible. At night, when the costumes are set aside, the true face is revealed, weary, undecorated, longing for release from the necessity of becoming. The play resumes each morning, but meaning slips through the hands like sand. Illusion is the fabric of civilization, spun from the collective refusal to face the void. The stories you inherit of progress, of destiny, of purpose are lanterns hung in a world indifferent to your hopes. You cling to them not because you believe, but because to let go would be to confront the chill of meaninglessness, the wind that sweeps through the hollow places in the heart. Yet even as you hold tighter, you know the stories are threadbare, patched, and mended beyond recognition. The soul tires not from unbelief, but from the labor of pretending to believe. There are moments, brief and sharp as lightning, when the scaffolding collapses and the self stands naked before the world. In these intervals, there is no comfort in belonging, no solace in possession. The love you sought cannot shield you. The achievements you gathered dissolve like mist. You are left with nothing but the unmediated awareness of your own contingency. The knowledge that everything you have built is provisional, destined to pass away. In the aftermath, there is a silence that does not soothe, but clarifies. Suffering reveals the outline of truth, where comfort only blurs. To detach is not to retreat from the world, nor to disdain its pleasures, but to see through them, to recognize the transparency of all things. Detachment is the clarity that comes when the will falters, when striving grows still. In the absence of pursuit, the world remains as it is, neutral, unyielding, impassive. The pain does not vanish, but it ceases to define. The self no longer strains against its boundaries, but settles into the quiet knowledge that nothing is owed, nothing promised. The world does not exist for you. It simply exists. What is left when the noise fades is the simplicity of being, the movement of breath, the flicker of thought, the slow march of time across the body. No future achievement redeems the present, no past regret stains it. The suffering persists, but it no longer demands explanation or remedy. It is woven into the texture of existence, as inevitable as nightfall, as indifferent as the passing wind. To see this clearly is not to despair, but to awaken to the sheer contingency of everything. The miracle and the tragedy are the same. One learns, at last, to sit with the hunger, to make peace with the ache. The days continue, marked less by hope than by endurance, less by aspiration than by the gentle surrender to what cannot be changed. The world does not answer, it does not need to. The tiredness remains, but it is no longer a curse. It is the sign that the will has met its match, that the struggle has found its limit. So the candle burns on, its flame untroubled by the dark. The shadows lengthen, the silence deepens. There is no epiphany, no sudden transformation. Only the quiet acceptance that to live is to tire, and to tire is to understand. In this fading light, the soul ceases to reach. It simply abides, alone and unafraid, in the vastness of what is. In the soft gloom of evening, when the world's machinery slows and the air thickens with the residue of unspoken thoughts, the truth gathers like mist in the corners of consciousness. The room, the objects within it, the very weight of your body, all are suffused with the same silent question, unarticulated but inescapable. For what end? The heart, too, offers no answer. Its beat is not an argument, but an ongoing concession to necessity. The body's concession to the will's unrelenting command persists, even as you know not why. You sense, beneath every act, a futility too deep for language. You rise, eat, converse, perform the 1,000 rituals of a day, but each action feels as if performed at a distance, through the heavy gauze of fatigue. There is a gulf between intention and result, between longing and its brief appeasement. What others call living is revealed in lucid moments as a ceaseless choreography of postponement. Every effort delays the confrontation with emptiness, but never averts it. Every pleasure, so carefully courted, is already tinged with the bitterness of its own brevity. People speak of meaning as if it is a quarry to be excavated, a mineral vein running through the bedrock of daily existence, awaiting discovery by the industrious seeker. But meaning is not discovered, only invented, and every invention trembles at the approach of night. The stories that animate childhood, that guide youth, that steady the hand in adulthood grow thin and brittle with the passage of years. The old myths do not sustain, the new ones do not convince. What remains is a mute resignation, a knowledge without consolation, that all narratives are scaffolds erected over the abyss. The self itself is a construction, stitched together from inherited fragments, habits of speech, gestures learned in the half-light of family rooms and public spaces. To peer behind this tapestry is to see only a restless, insatiable will, not a sovereign agent, but a feverish compulsion, endlessly dividing the world into what is and what should be. The ego, celebrated as the locus of freedom, is revealed as a prisoner of its own hunger. The chase for identity, the labor of self-definition, is exhausting, for every assertion of self is shadowed by doubt, by the suspicion that one is nothing more than a mirror reflecting other mirrors, a flicker of awareness trapped in its own endless regress. The world remains indifferent. Nature, in its grandeur, offers neither solace nor accusation. The trees, the sky, the shifting tides, they do not care for your plans, your suffering, your despair. They simply are, and their being is not contingent on human desire. The city, with its grids and lights and noise, is no less indifferent, built not for comfort but for commerce, for the endless transaction of one hunger for another. There is no refuge in the crowd. Anonymity only sharpens the ache of isolation. To seek relief in others is to discover the limits of empathy. You speak your sorrow, but it echoes back, distorted, misunderstood, met with platitudes or unease. Each soul is encased in its own opacity, able to gesture but not to merge, to witness but not to truly know. Even in love, even in the deepest intimacy, there is a kernel of solitude that cannot be breached. The eyes meet, but the gaze returns, unanswered, to its own darkness. Memory is no consolation. It is a museum of absences, a slow parade of what has been lost, what could not be held. The faces, the voices, the moments of laughter and pain all recede, growing less distinct with each year, until they are only shadows flickering on the walls of a silent mind. The past is unrecoverable, the future unpromised. Only the present remains, and it, too, slips away the moment it is noticed. Ambition falters. The desire to shape the world, to leave a mark, to be remembered, is revealed as a faint hope against the erasure of time. History swallows all achievements. Even the greatest are reduced to a line in a book, a name on a stone, eventually forgotten. The minor victories of ordinary life, the praise, the promotion, the brief moments of recognition are gone before they can be savored. The will grows tired of striving for what cannot endure. In the end, detachment is not chosen, but imposed. It arrives as a weary clarity, a dimming of the fever that once animated desire. The world, seen without the haze of hope, is neither cruel nor kind. It is simply alien, unmoved by human pleading. You learn to loosen your grip, to let the days unfold without insistence. Suffering remains, but it is stripped of its drama. It becomes ordinary, as natural as hunger, as unobtrusive as the passing weather. The self grows thin, translucent. What mattered so intensely now seems distant, muted. The passions fade, the resentments lose their bite. You watch yourself move through the patterns of living with a detachment that is neither resignation nor despair, but a kind of silent acquiescence. The fatigue persists, but it is gentle now, no longer a struggle but a settling into what is. Time slows. The world grows quieter. There is no revelation, no thunderbolt of understanding, only the gradual subsiding of turbulence, the settling of dust in a long abandoned room. The will still stirs, but its commands are weaker, less insistent. The body continues, the mind drifts, the heart beats, the days pass. And in this slow dissolution, there is a peace that is not happiness, but the cessation of torment. Suffering has not been cured, nor has the world been redeemed. Illusion has not been conquered, but merely seen through. What remains is an awareness that asks nothing, expects nothing, demands nothing. The flame of the will flickers low, and in its waning light you see not salvation, but release. The soul, weary beyond speech, finds in this exhaustion the only home it has ever known. night gathers with an indifferent tenderness, softening the edges of the world into silence. The walls dissolve, the burdens of identity loosen their grip, and the body grows weightless, as if the self is finally permitted to drift untethered through the darkness. The ancient ache, the companion of every waking hour, no longer presses against the heart, but mingles quietly with the hush. Breaths lengthen, time falls away. In this quiet, nothing remains to be claimed or lost. The parade of desire, always so insistent, now appears faint and spectral, a pageant glimpsed through the veil of sleep. You sense, at last, the futility of struggle, not as a defeat, but as the gentle unwinding of a long tension. The mind, once taught with questions, lets go of its need to understand. The world, shorn of promise, reveals itself as neither adversary nor friend, but as a field of indifferent unfolding. The drama of will is over, only being remains. There is no triumph here, no melody of redemption. What fills the emptiness is not hope, but stillness, the slow pulse of existence, shorn of expectation. The wounds of longing and loss become translucent, not by virtue of healing, but by the soft dimming of their urgency. To suffer is simply to exist. To tire is to participate in the ceaseless drift of all things toward dissolution. This truth is neither harsh nor kind, but vast and impersonal, like the night sky arched above a sleeping city. The hunger for meaning grows quiet, recognizing its own source in the restless will. Every story, every belief, every memory is gently unbound, a knot loosened in the fabric of experience. What seemed essential proves, in the end, to be only a moment's arrangement of shadow and light. Nothing is required of you now. The soul, stripped of illusion, is permitted to rest. You watch from a distance that grows with every thought, as the self dissolves into the broad current of what is. The need to become, to transform, to matter fades into the background. The endless war with disappointment, the exhausting search for solace, all yield to the simplicity of presence. The world remains unchanged, but the compulsion to resist, to hope, to possess has grown still. The night deepens, the flame dwindles, casting its last warmth into the unanswering dark. You have not escaped suffering, nor have you transcended the conditions of your birth. You have only seen clearly, and in that seeing, the fever has broken. The tiredness is no longer an affliction, but a quiet affirmation of reality, the sign that the self has ceased to claw against the truth. There are no more illusions left to defend, no more promises to be betrayed. There is only the hush, the quiet dissolution of desire, the final hush that is neither resignation nor despair, but the disappearance of struggle itself. The I slips away, gentle as a sigh, unresisted by hope or fear. What is left is not absence, but an unadorned presence, silent and still. The candle is spent, the shadows reclaim the room. The suffering endures, transformed into tranquility, not by will, but by exhaustion. The world moves on, indifferent, and you remain no longer apart from it, no longer demanding of it, but simply, quietly, part of its silent drift. And as the final thread of longing unravels, what remains is not the answer, but the end of the question. The soul dissolves into the night, the rest is silence.